Good. Well, then let's go forward. Do you want to start the introduction
Yeah,
again?
otherwise you can give me the video and then I'll reduce the white noise from video editing tools.
Yeah. No. Let's try to make this as raw as possible.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that it's easily eating into writing time, which we don't want.
Yeah. So let's begin with the concept, what we are trying to do before you introduce us, so that people stay hooked to the video, why they should watch the video.
Okay. We will need to say at least our names.
Yeah. Please.
All right. Okay, cool. So this is going to be very raw. So let's start with the concept then. So I'm Vasco.
I'm Ed.
And we're going to talk about how to write a book project, how to write a book. So a book project. But we are talking about writing books in a very specific way, Ed. I know we've worked in the past together. You have a lot more marketing and digital marketing background than I do. And of course, I have a lot more product development background than you do. So we're kind of like mixing these very different perspectives. My take on the book project is that as our audience wants to benefit from writing a book, like no one will write a book if they don't think there's something in it for them. So that my concept here is how to help our audience figure out their voice and how to write, but also specifically how to benefit from a book project, and obviously how to benefit the audience of the book and how to benefit their own career. So that's a little bit my take on the concept we're developing here. What's your take, Ed?
Also to consider this as the primary tool to get you booked at speaking gigs as a speaker. So if you are considering, I mean, of course, it does help. That same process applies to if you want to establish yourself as a well-known consultant, coach, or anything else, and that needs personal branding. But more specifically, this book is focusing on how to get be renowned as a speaker. And this is something that you have a lot of experience in. I have learned a lot from you, and having the opportunity to work as a digital marketing manager and consultant to a lot of people who are actually speakers, public speakers. We all are putting all that information in a book is kind of a challenge plus a fun activity.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of this will be about sharing our own experience. I mean, I've written books and I've helped others write books. I think we are up to 7 books right now with Oikosofi and Happy Melly Express, which are the 2 brands that I manage. But from that experience, I can say that the reason to write a book is that it establishes our contribution to our community, right? Like whatever, we're always part of a community. Parents are part of the parent community or school community. We're a part of our village community, but professionally, we're also part of a community. Like in your case, you're part of the community of digital marketeers. And in my case, I'm part of the product development and agile communities professionally. So it is also a little bit about establishing how we contribute to our community. We get a lot, right? We all read books and learn from them and apply that in our daily work. But then also we're sharing what we've learned, our own experience towards the rest of the community. Hopefully, making them appreciate, but definitely benefit from what we share. But at the end, it is also about being employable, making sure that when we want to move on, we can, and we are a recognized brand. So our name is recognized in our industries, and ultimately allowing us to choose our own employers, right? So that's a little bit one of the kind of perspectives of this book project that we have going on from my side. How about you, Ed?
Yeah, I have an example of this actually, just following your advice and footsteps, things that I learned while working with you for a year and a half. A before and after story. So I'll give you a contrast. So when I finished my MBA in 2012, I applied for jobs for a year. and I applied for around 400 jobs, and 400, not like just send your CV and you're done. I literally studied the companies and write the cover letter with very specific to those companies and stuff, but I had no kind of a background in that one thing. So it was a bit difficult to even get, I never got a single interview call. I know it's a little bit too much, but I felt there's something wrong with me. But anyway, I got called from a headhunter. Finally, the company that I got employed was a not-for-profit, one of the largest in the world. I ended up managing their headquarters. But that was more like a passive. So they approached me that way. Fast forward to 2019, I did a couple of startup ventures, have worked as a contract digital marketing manager, digital marketing director, and also just as a consultant. But when you work as a contractor or a freelancer, the business side is always have ups and downs, and it has seasonalities and stuff. And that was like sometimes in the year I have like, yeah, very good. Like things are going good, things are picking up, and then they die down. And this also results in difficulties in relationships, personal life, confidence, and a lot of other things. So I found myself working on personal projects, and one of them was a book that I was conceptualizing. So I worked on experimental projects. I'm talking about experimental, just the way that Vasco is describing. You're describing, Vasco, and pick up something, put it in the public, and we'll talk about it in a minute. Put up in front of people and see if it sticks, and don't feel bad if it doesn't. Just get rid of it and move on to the next idea until you find the right one that works.
And that's actually one of the principles, is that only your audience knows what they want. You can't know in advance. I mean, you know a lot of stuff, but you need to show it and get their feedback.
Yeah, and I usually was falling into the trap of that I'm my audience. If I like it, my audience will like it. That's never
I think
true,
most product developers also think that way.
Yeah, exactly. So in 2019, from I think I looked for a job for 6 months. In those 6 months, I put in my CV the first line, the cover in my CV, the first line was, I'm the author of this book. Now that book didn't exist. It's in writing. It's still in writing. I haven't finished that book, but I'm an author officially. I'm writing it. Like I was getting calls here and there. Like I think I got around 100 different interview calls from that CV in those 6 months. And a lot of companies, I went to the final stage just to after that realize like, okay, it may not be a good fit. It may not be a great fit. So, but the time when I accepted the job at this current company, which is a personal development, a passion of mine, there were 6 companies I was in interview on the final stage, and 5 of them were software companies. So for me, this became the obvious choice because this was an industry I wanted to get into for a long time. And it's very rare to find product development as a job role in this industry, because these are like a little bit less traditional and then more build as you go along type of companies. So this is the difference. Before 400 applications, nobody cares. But then what changed in the after stage was that I just showed them that I'm authoring a book that it doesn't even exist, by the way. And I tell them honestly, like it's a book I'm writing publicly. And I'm like,
that actually raises a topic we've talked about, that which is that as an author that wants to bring value to community, we need to become comfortable with the fact that the book isn't going to be finished for most of the project, right? The book is only finished at the end, and if we wait until the book is finished, it might take years before anything can be out. And what we are doing, like right here, talking about this publicly, is to show that there's a lot more than writing a book to writing a book. One of the things that we struggle with, and always, because that's part of the product development struggle, is to find an audience, right? And what we are doing is showing, okay, this is what we plan to write about. These are our struggles. this is the things we're going to try out. And of course, some of them will work, some of them will not work. So we have to be comfortable with failure, right? And in this case, in our case, public failure, because people will know what doesn't work. So it's a book that is not really only a book, it's also a media project, right? This is now on YouTube, maybe a podcast later, who knows? But that's what we are going to do. Like Ed and I are going to share what we struggle with. And, sometimes things will go smoothly. Sometimes we will talk about our frustrations and what fails. But that's what really product development is all about. And that's what establishing yourself as a brand in your industry is all about. It's about, trying different things and figuring out what works, what doesn't work. There's one kind of like red line underneath all of this, which is that you are bringing value to your audience. And that's something that I often see people forgetting about, is that this is not about building ourselves as experts only. That's part of it. But it is about helping people with problems they already have, right? Like the Zig Ziglar's quote, you can get anything in life as long as you help people get what they want in life. So if you're bringing value to your audience, then of course they will give that value back to you with at least attention, potentially sales, but definitely recognition, right? So that's also part of this project that we are going through, which is showing in practice what we are going to write about in the book.
So what book are we writing? Let's introduce that idea.
Yeah, so we're writing a book about how to write a book, but for a specific reason, right? We're talking to our persona is Jennifer. That's the name we chose. And we did, we're going to talk about that in a future episode, but we did an SMIQ, single most important question survey, and we found out what Jennifer struggles with and why Jennifer wants to write the book, right? And of course, we have our own experience, but we are writing for Jennifer, not for ourselves only. So what we are trying to do with this book project is to give Jennifer, i.e. everyone that wants what Jennifer wants, which is to become an expert in their industry, establish a personal brand, and ultimately become an invited speaker at conferences in her industry. We're giving a process of how we are able to do that ourselves and what we have done in the past. And we're going to, of course, talk about other people's in different industries, what they did and what they learned. And we're going to share the whole process through that book.
Yeah, and the best part is we are using the lean methodologies, agile methodology, and scientific process. So everything that we are writing the book about in the book is not something, it's very scientific, it's research led. We are not inventing anything, we are actually doing research. And that's a hint there was SMIQ when Vasco was talking about single most important question. That actually is a code word, our code word for a survey that we did, and then hopefully we'll explore that in one of the upcoming videos, how actually it's done. What are the benefits, how to do it, and how to extract information from it, and then write a book. So that takes away a lot of pressure. But you have like how to write a great book. It doesn't matter. We don't have to write a great book. We just have to write a book that helps the person who told us they have a problem, and you solve it, your job is done.
And by the way, that's the definition of a great book. Like how many of us have actually read a book and say, oh man, I'm struggling with this. Oh, this is a great solution. I'm going to try it out. Like it wasn't about the quality of the writing, although that has an impact. It wasn't about the promotion of the book, although that has an impact. It was about the fact that when we read the book, we got something out of it that helped us professionally. I remember reading the Agile Software Development with Scrum, the Little Black Book, and going through the book in one weekend and completely being mind blown, and then going back to work on Monday and completely changing my perspective. That's the kind of book you want to write, because that's the book that will establish you as an expert. But also that's what really brings value to your community, is something that you've discovered through your own experience that can be shared with others, and it will help them. So another aspect that we talk about, and you mentioned, we're basing all of this on research. By the way, this video is research. Everything we do is an experiment, and we'll be sharing more about that later. But the idea is the first step in anybody's project to write a book is to build an audience who am I writing for, right? Okay, that there's a little bit of reflection and so on. And that's actually one of the first struggles that we are tackling with this video, is to find you, dear listener and dear viewer, who will benefit from writing a book, wants to know the process so that you can apply it to yourself. That's who we are looking for. And that's why we're putting this video out there, so that you can find us too. And hopefully we establish a valuable exchange here. We share information, you pay us attention, right? You listen to us, and then ultimately, hopefully write that book by following this process and benefit from it directly. That's one of the struggles. And turns out, I'm a product developer. I've worked with consumer products and business products for many years. Turns out that's the biggest struggle product developers also have, which is how to get somebody to pay attention to their product. And of course, through that, discover how the product helps them, right?
Yeah. And this ties my background with product development as well. I've worked with Wasco for 1.5 years as the director of marketing in Ecosofi. And then I went on to become a consultant in digital marketing, eventually landing up as a full-time product manager. I wouldn't be a product manager if I was not with Wasco, because the love for this craft originated from there. One of the things I'm most experienced in working with online publishing companies is product launches. So the book that I mentioned before is all about product launches. Not product launches, any product launches, book launches, and in different ways and at different stages, from the time when you just have an idea. If you start a launch at that time, how will it look like? And this is one of them, by the way. And to the time when you actually have a published book, or even a traditionally published book which has been failed before or maybe successful before, and how to relaunch it, and things like that. So at the time when I was telling about the story I was telling you about job applications, I did not have audiences because I was still experimenting with which direction this will go, which direction my personal brand should go. So my audience was the companies that could potentially employ me. So there's always an audience. So for that initial stage, my audience were only those people who were recruiting. So they see the first line in my CV and they know that this is different from any other application they ever got. And that test proved to be true. I get more replies, or maybe more opportunities to talk to the CEO or someone in the company bypassing the recruitment team as a potential book author than anything I've done before that. It's not that I started with this approach, I started with normal approach.
That's one of the things we will talk about is how a book can help you even before the book is finished. But let's be honest, don't start the book that you don't want to finish, because it will become quite clear if you don't want to finish it. But there's a couple of things we will talk about, like empathy map and story map and so on, that will help you understand what the book could look like. And it will help you also get this holistic understanding of what is it that you're building, and then will feed the experiments you run with your audience to discover, is this really what my audience needs? Because you are the expert, you have the knowledge, but at the end of the day, you need to put that knowledge and that expertise in a form that your audience can consume, that they can benefit from. So that's, I think, one of the first struggles we have to help our authors with, is to first accept that they are experts in their field, because we all are, we all have experience, right? We are experts in some areas of the field that we are part of. But then how to put that information forward in a way that creates empathy. And we'll talk about that maybe even in the next episode, who knows, how to create empathy with the reader, so that the reader knows that, okay, so it doesn't really matter whether I consider you an expert. Of course, it is part of it. But what really matters is that I consider you an expert that can help me as a reader. And that's really also what we are talking about with this book, right? Talking about how to help you as a reader to achieve your goals professionally and in life by reading this book and applying the process.
Yeah. So that book, by the way, is finished and will be probably released after this book, because that book is way more technical than this first book, because you need to have a book or the book concept before you actually launch your book. So this book that we are writing together, it fits first. That brings me to Vasco. You have one of your personal struggles as a writer is about the empathy, just the topic that you covered. I think we should talk a little bit more about it and the solution that we came up with, how to overcome that challenge.
Yeah, so I shared with Ed that I was having a problem with the start of chapter 1. And chapter 1 for any book project is very important, because the first few words of the book are the words that determine whether the reader will stick to the book or not. So it's very important that as we start chapter 1, that you create immediate empathy with the reader. What I mean in practice is that they need to believe that the story you're sharing is their story. The author is not the hero in the book. The reader is the hero in the book. And therefore, we need to somehow bring the reader into the universe of the book that we're writing and put them at the center of that universe. The book is about the reader, never about the author. Keep this in mind. This will affect how you write and what topics you choose and so on. So I shared with Ed that I was struggling with the start of the book, because I wanted to make sure that our Jennifer, the reader, the persona we have as the reader, identifies with the story in the start of chapter 1. So Ed, what did you come up with as a potential?
Yeah. So first of all, the persona that we have is a superimposition of us in it as well as our reader. So because we are also belong to the same demographic, it has a lot of your journey mixed in it. So the best way to extract, I found, like your empathy side of things is not to let you just like sit and explore, because it's not coming out naturally. But I, as a third party person, as somebody outside of you who don't have the same worldview, who don't have the same biases, can ask you questions, interview you, and let you tell your journey and extract that part of the journey of your empathy side that actually could go on and become the first part of your chapter. And we can publish that publicly, and that could be our next video.
Yeah, so stay tuned for the next video. There's a link below this video where you can go and join the community of people who want to write a book and get a lot more content than what's available here. But we will be sharing our story and our journey here. So you can just stick around, subscribe to the channel or the podcast, depending on how you're watching or viewing or listening this, and continue to follow our journey. So that is it for today. Now let's wrap up, Ed. So next time we will talk about how to find an empathic way to start chapter 1, right?
Yes, that's great.
I'll see you soon, guys.
See you guys.